Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of M&M Podcasts. I'm Michael Georgeski, joined by my co-host, Matt Nicoletti. Matt, how are you going today?
Very good, Michael. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. Before we start, I just wanted to give a shout. I just wanted to give a shout out to a team I saw on the weekend that won their final. Eddie's St Edmunds beat Tuggeranong United over at Ipen Park in Call 18's Div 2 final. Really good to see good crowds as well at these these 18s and 16s games. It was packed. You could barely get a park anywhere in the in Cornwall there. Heaps of games going on. I think it was mostly Div 1, 2, 3 between 18s and 16s.
Yep.
So that was good to see. Congrats to Eddie's on that win. And and well done as well, I have to say, to the ref in that match. I think because obviously finals are really hard. Young ref there. Finals are really hard to ref, but I thought he handled it exceptionally well and made very, very good calls. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him reffing CPL, MPL, MPLW in the future. I thought he was really good, shirt. So shout out to whoever that ref may be. But besides that, Michael, how are you going?
Yeah, doing well. Sort of just to piggyback what you just sort of mentioned there. I think there were obviously some really good crowds at these sort of more recent games over the course of the weekends for finals. I know that one of my little brothers went and watched one of his mates play, and they were playing in the 18s Div 3 final. So that was between Majura and Queanbeyan, and that just gave me a little bit of a sense of that there were probably going to be quite a few people going out there to watch. So, I mean, when you just mentioned there that you were watching the 18s Div 2 final and talking about the crowds and whatnot, I think it would have been very, very similar.
I think Queanbeyan won that one, if I'm not
mistaken.
They did. So congrats to them.
Yeah. Big
congrats to everyone who won.
To them. yeah, that's right. So, no, very good to sort of see, all the football that sort of took place over the weekend, getting some good crowd numbers. And then obviously, it's good to hear a good refereeing story there as well, Matt. Some young talent coming through in the refereeing ranks. So, hopefully we get to see more of that sort of. I know that the season's coming to an end now, but sort of heading into next season, sort of increasing those numbers and, getting sort of referees more confident, more comfortable in terms of, officiating, multiple age groups and multiple leagues, not only just next season, but for years to come. So we'll see how that sort of develops over the next year or so. But congrats to all the teams that, won some silverware over the weekend. Without further ado, Matt, let's start with you. Some NPL action. We had obviously the last round across all three competitions, which we'll obviously break down throughout this episode. But let's kick things off with some NPL action.
Yeah, and probably there was two specific matches with huge stakes, and this probably had the biggest stakes of them all. It was O'Connor Knights 3, Belconnen United 1. I was there calling this one with Rice over at O'Connor Enclosure. Might I add before that, fantastic work to everyone that sort of deals with the O'Connor pitch. Obviously, at the start of the year, or midway through the year, wasn't in the best conditions. Clearly, it's been well maintained. Obviously, not a lot of football's been on it. The rain's helped as well. It has looked the best it has in a long time. So well done to Olympic and O'Connor and all those people that deal with that pitch there. To get a pitch consistently better throughout the season in Canberra is very, very hard. Oh. Usually it's done just at the end of the season during the off season. So well done to everyone there. But O'Connor opened the score in the 19th minute. A corner was whipped into the box. Queanbeyan headed it back to Michael Adams, who struck an absolute terrific goal mid-air with a stupendous crack. Go watch this if you haven't seen it. First of Michael Adams' goals on the weekend. It has to be up there for contenders for goal of the season. There's just been so many, but that is one of them. O'Connor struck again just minutes before the end of the first half when a skewed clearance from Zach Mabry fell to the path of Michael Adams, who squared it for Queanbeyan, who struck a beautiful low shot just outside the box in the bottom corner. Heading into halftime, O'Connor had the momentum and Belco needed a jolt and to start the second stanza brimming, as they needed at least 3 goals at this point to avoid relegation. They started the second half exactly as they needed it by scoring in the opening 2 minutes. Dustin Wells hit a cross in the box, which was well positioned for Luke Vallone, who positioned a header well into the far post. Belco had the momentum at this point, and they were beginning to have more chances, start taking more control of the match, and they were threatening an equaliser. But Phil Bourgeau was sent to the sin bin, and this was a period where O'Connor took control. They slowly started to break up Belco's momentum with the extra man advantage. No goals scored in this 10-minute period, but arguably this was a period where O'Connor started to assert their dominance again in the second half. O'Connor struck the final dagger in Belco's NPL survival hopes when Regan Walsh whipped in a cross from a free kick. The ball deflected off John O'Turek into the path of Michael Adams, who scored his brace to make it 3-1 in the 81st minute. This victory, along with Canberra Olympics' loss to Gungahlin, means that O'Connor have made the top 4 and the finals. They finished in 4th place with 24 points, 1 point above Canberra Olympic. Very impressive return to the top flight of Canberra football after 13 years away. Congratulations to O'Connor Knights. Great achievement for them, like I said, just being promoted and to already make the finals. Well done to all the coaching staff and players and volunteers involved with that club. They will face Monaro in the elimination semi-final this weekend. And unfortunately for Belconnen, this means they have been relegated to CPL for next season. They finished in 8th place with 16 points, 1 point behind West Canberra Wanderers. This is probably not somewhere they would have seen themselves at the start of the season. And last week's loss to Tigers was probably the result that put them, that was probably the most lethal for them in this stage. The week before, they drew with Canberra Croatia 1-1. But the issue was that West Canberra got the victory over Monaro that weekend. West Canberra lost to Gungahlin last weekend, but Belco losing the Tigers, that was the one that put them in a tough position where they needed to beat an O'Connor side that also needed to win if they wanted to make the top 4. So there was a few results that were critical, but that was probably one of the big ones that put them in that position. Commiserations to Belconnen. Best of luck for next season. And obviously, there'll still be a lot of questions about what will be happening there and how they'll be, organizing for next season. I'm sure they're just going to sort of take a break for now and reflect on what's going on. So commiserations to them. And I guess a bit surprising that we won't be seeing Belconnen, such a big club in Canberra, in the 2nd division, and McKellar Park as well, such a famed ground in Canberra, will be in the CPL. But as Tuggeranong proved, CPL is quite a challenging league, but they, put it all behind them and just push forward. So it'll be interesting to see if Belconnen can do the same thing next season.
Definitely.
Michael, do you have any thoughts on Belconnen going down before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of I think just how everything's sort of played out. I think it's a little bit surprising just of a club of that stature going down is a little bit of a shock, I suppose, especially at the start of the season. I don't think there would have been that many people that would have tipped Belconnen to be the club to go down to CPL next season, but that's how it played out. And I guess from that standpoint, like I said, it's just a little bit surprising because often when you talk about Canberra football clubs, Belconnen United's normally, right at the top in terms of the popularity and how well known they are around the Canberra community. So, I mean, to have a club of their stature, go down to CPL will definitely be a shock and a surprise for them, not only the people associated with the club, but the fans as well. But like you said, Matt, it was a good example. Tuggeranong proved that you just got to put that obviously behind you and you got to push forward. I know that, this is very early days and this is next season that we're talking about, but that's the sort of mindset that they're going to have to get themselves into to try and gain promotion back up to where they feel that they belong. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how they fare next season. It's obviously very unlucky. It was very tight this season in terms of the relegation battle between them and West Canberra in particular. And it was, Belconnen on this occasion that weren't able to survive this time around, but we'll wait and see what happens next season in the CPL 2022. So the 2023 season. So next up, we have the Monaro Panthers, who were able to finish off their season, Matt, with a win 2-1 over Tigers FC. Goals from Neo and Carl. And for Tigers, it was Queanbeyan getting on the score sheet for the away side. Monaro rounded off the regular season with a good win here against Tigers, which will certainly give them some confidence heading into finals football match with Matt, which we'll obviously get into a little bit later. Monaro, they had a lot more opportunities I saw in front of goal, particularly in the first half. And I felt that when Adam New scored sort of 4 minutes there before the break, that it was sort of well-deserved on Monaro's, from their point of view, because of the sort of opportunities that they were able to create themselves in that first half. And it was a great pass from Ben Bassasilk, to sort of cut the defense open and find Neo sort of running onto the ball there and tucking it into the far corner to give Monaro the advantage there. And then, 8 minutes after the restart, Matt, they made it 2-0 due to their main man, Andre Carl, who Russ mentioned on commentary was going through a little bit of a goal drought. And, despite, being maybe a little bit fortunate that his strike, from outside the box ended up in the back of the net, sometimes you don't really care how it ends up in the back of the net. The main thing is that it gets there. And he was able to score, sort of get that monkeys off his back a little bit heading into such a crucial, next part of the season with finals football looming just around the corner. Tigers, they did manage to, claw a goal back, straight away, pretty much off the kickoff. Well, not sort of like off the kickoff where they played it and went straight forward. They sort of played it back and then worked themselves around the pitch and then made their way forward into the final third. And that sort of saw, Josh Golevsky get the ball sort of on that left channel there, cut the ball across to Queanbeyan, who, produced a good finish there to make it 2-1. But Monaro were able to sort of hold on from that point to get the 3 points. And the result means that they obviously stay third in the table, which they quite comfortably did, like we've sort of mentioned over the last few weeks, that's where they were going to end up. And Tigers headed into this round being in 6th position, and due to this loss, they still stay in 6th position. They weren't, that close to the relegation battle a few weeks ago. We were, floating around that idea that, when things weren't looking great for them, that they could be part of that conversation as well, but they did manage to avoid it in the end. So I think they'll be expecting a big bounce back next season. Tigers, a little bit of a disappointing season from their standpoint, not even being able to secure finals football. So you can be sure that they'll be raring to go for the 2023 season. They'll just be happy to sort of see the end of this season, Matt, like I mentioned, pick themselves up and, get themselves ready for next season, because I think there'll be a lot sort of expected of them in terms of a bounce back in 2023. Matt, who do we have next up?
Next up, we have Gungahlin United 2-1 victory over Canberra Olympic. This was the other match that had implications on it in terms of the final standings of the season and potential finals for Olympic and O'Connor. Gungahlin opened the score in the 69th minute after Misko Naumowski struck an absolute pearler of a free kick at the near post. Naumowski can add this to his other free kick he scored a couple of weeks ago that Russ and I called that match. I think it was against O'Connor Knights, I believe. Gungahlin doubled their lead to 2-0. 14 minutes later, Naumowski either struck a low shot or a low cross. They hit the far post. The deflection went to Brindabella Madrid, who squared it for Leon Mikkel for the goal. Olympic had an immediate response to going down again by halving the deficit. 1 minute later, Luca Flores connected a header neatly in the bottom corner. for his 7th goal of the season. Olympic had some other late chances, but were not able to gain that equaliser. Gungahlin, regardless of this result, were still going to remain in 2nd place. And I guess they were purely playing for good momentum heading into the finals, which they did get because they got that win. Gungahlin finished, like I said, in 2nd place with 40 points overall. Marcel Munoz's side will take on Canberra, Croatia this weekend in the qualification semi-final. So the winner of that will go to the final. The loser will get another chance at the winner of 3v4. And Olympic were very, very close to finals. If they were able to score an equaliser at the end of this game, if my math isn't mistaken, they would have been in the finals because if they had a draw, it would have put their goal difference up by 1 and they would have had 1 better goal difference than the O'Connor Knights and they would have had the same points. So very, very, very fine margins for Olympic missing out on finals. So, unlucky for Olympic in that regard. They had a really strong end to the season, didn't they? But there's lots of promise there for next season. It was always going to be a tough fight between those two, between O'Connor Knights and Olympic. Both sides had very, very good parts to the season for themselves. And in this stage, congrats to O'Connor and commiserations to Olympic in that regard. So overall, Olympic finished the season in 5th place with 26 points, 1 point off O'Connor Knights, who had 27 in 4th place. Michael, what do we have last?
Yeah, so our last matchup for the last round of the NPL competition was Canberra, Croatia scoring 5 goals, Matt, to no reply. West Canberra, it was 5-0 to Canberra, Croatia in this one. Barak, Dominici with a double, Tanoski and Teneski on the score sheet there for the hosts against West Canberra Wanderers. It was a 5-star performance that we're sort of used to seeing from the best side in the competition this season, Matt. So you could sense that Canberra, Croatia were in the mood early, when they scored in the 9th minute through Barak in this game, Matt. But West Canberra, they made a good account of themselves to keep fighting, especially because of what was at stake, for them heading into this last round of the competition where, they would have had to possibly rely on the result of Belconnen United up against O'Connor Knights. So they obviously were playing with a lot of intensity and a lot of heart to sort of keep their NPL futures alive, because when you're playing in a game like that, you're just never really sort of certain when you're out on the pitch of what's going to happen. And from that moment onwards, going into the second half where Canberra, Croatia had the 1-0 advantage, they eventually, pierced their way through the West Canberra back line again, just before the hour mark through Dominici after he managed to pick out the top corner. You couldn't really tell if it was one of those sort of crosses that ends up in the back of the net, or if he indeed intentionally meant to sort of curl the ball into the far corner. Nevertheless, it went into the back of the net, and Canberra, Croatia were able to double their lead in this game. He grabbed his 2nd goal of the game nearly 20 minutes later. It was just a nice sort of finish into the far corner. He took a touch inside the box, opened up his body, and sort of just put it into the far corner. Tanoski and Teneski, they rounded off a good day's work for the hosts, by adding a 4th and 5th in the 85th minute and 88th minute, respectively. So sort of 2 goals there in the space of 3 minutes near the end of the game, to cement Canberra, Croatia's 14th win from 21 matches this season, which I think just sort of highlights just how good they've been this season. And we've talked about it numerous times on the podcast, Matt, just how good and consistent that they've been all season long. They've played at such a high level. And in this game, it was really no different. They were just at their best, and, they'll be hungry to, obviously pick up that grand final trophy as well. So you can expect them to just keep riding this momentum until the season is completely finished. So we'll just have to wait and see. But some absolutely cracking games coming up, aren't there, Matt?
There certainly are, and when I mention these games now, I'm just going to say to be confirmed, because there are times there, but from a few people I've talked to, it might be changed. So it's just considering this is Monday and there's another. Well, when we record is Monday, there's a few days to go before this. It's probably near guaranteed one of these is going to end up changing. So for all we're going to say is it's this weekend and to be confirmed in terms of the matches. But the fixtures we do have are Monaro Panthers against O'Connor Knights. The elimination final, it's pretty simple. Whoever loses gets kicked out, and whoever wins versus the team that lost the 1v2 round. This is huge. Monaro's first finals appearance for a while, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. That's right. There was no finals last year, but they did make the top 4. And then O'Connor Knights, obviously, their first season back in NPL, and they are in the finals. So this is huge for both teams. They haven't been in the final series for NPL for a while. So big for both. And then the next one is Canberra, Croatia against Gungahlin United. Always a lot of tension between these two teams. They don't particularly like each other, and there's obviously a lot of history here. This is a repeat of the 2020 final, which was the first final we ever covered in terms of NPL. Croatia versus Gungahlin. Time and day to be confirmed, of course. Winner of this goes through to the final. Loser plays the winner of 3v4. So this is the caveat. If you finish first and second, if you lose, you get another shot. That's why teams, try and fight to finish as high as they can. That's why this system works, I think, for finals. We have NPLW. Belconnen United, huge 6-0 victory against West Canberra Wanderers. This match was a match of braces for Belconnen United, with 3 of their players bagging a brace. Captain Talia Backhouse led by example, scoring the first 2 goals in the opening 11 minutes. Both goals had some great team play, quick passing, and pressing as well to get these goals through. There was some really nice balls in behind and through the defense that Backhouse got the end of, and she was one-on-one both times with the keeper, slotting it past. Olivia Bonford's 2 goals came in the 14th and 59-minute marks. The pick of the bunch for me was the first one where Kira Bobbin put a very neat ball over the top with the outside of her boot that Bonford was able to get on the end of and finish it. And the second goal was also a great weave-in run from Bonford in and out of defenders before finishing it. Ewan scored her brace with goals in the 54th and 60th minutes. Where the first was good positioning to capitalize on a keeper save. And the second was a great breakaway from where she broke away from the Wanderers' defense, used her pace and power to work her way into an open position, 1-on-1 for keeper, and put it past the keeper. The Wanderers, like I said, were suffocated by the high press early on by Belco in this one. They did settle into the game better later on, but the damage was already done in the opening half. Despite the loss, West Canberra do secure 4th place due to Gungalin's loss to Canberra, Croatia. So the Wanderers finished with 30 points, 3 points above Gungahlin. Congratulations to the Wanderers as they have made the finals. This is their first finals appearance since the rebranding of NPLW to NPLW as we know it now. They will face a familiar task next week as they play Belco again in the elimination final. So similar to like we said for the men's, winner goes through to the next semi-final and the loser is out. So Wanderers and Ray Castro, I'm sure, will be working on to sort of combat the high press and quick play of Belco next week. Belco rolled into the finals in style with this emphatic display. Scott Conlon's side finished the season in 3rd place, 46 points, and Michael only 3 points off 2nd place Canberra Olympics. So they had a really, really strong end to this season. As mentioned before, they will face Wanderers next week in the elimination final. So all to play for next week, of course, there. Michael, who do we have next up?
Yeah, next up is a game that you briefly mentioned just prior, Matt. It was Gungahlin United up against Canberra, Croatia, but it was the visitors that were too good on this occasion, obviously ending any hopes for Gungahlin United to make the finals for this season. 5-1 to Canberra, Croatia. It was Berkeley, Barach, Fensom, Burney, and Seton getting on the score sheet for the visitors, and Waters getting on on the scorecard for Gungahlin United in this one. Canberra, Croatia, they rounded off, a great regular NPLW season with a convincing display, Matt, against the resurgent Gungahlin United that we've sort of come to watch over the past, sort of month or so. They've sort of really picked things up after a difficult start to the season. All of Canberra, Croatia's goals in this match, Matt, they were pretty well worked, but the fifth goal was an absolute screamer from Bernie. I mean, finding the, top corner of the goal with a left-footed strike, just finding its way into the top corner of the goal. It was a phenomenal strike in that instance. I mean, you wouldn't find many keepers that, could get a hand on that one. In this case, they did, talking about Gungahlin United here, they did manage to, get themselves back in the match with Waters scoring in the 88th minute. Obviously, it only proved to be, a consolation as, Canberra, Croatia now bearing this, this result, what we already knew, that finished top of the table in this this season, in which they've proved to be, an absolute wrecking ball. They've been the best side in the competition as they head into finals football. And, despite Gungahlin, like I said, making drastic improvements under new coach Andrew Woodham, they just missed out on the finals positions. And, maybe if that appointment had been made, sooner, if Gungahlin United had found themselves in that situation where they needed a new coach sooner and Andrew had a bit more time, who knows, he may have been able to creep Gungahlin United into the top four ahead of maybe a West Canberra Wanderers in this instance. So they'll be more than motivated to come back next season, Matt, and get themselves back in the top four, because we know that that's when Gungahlin normally find themselves. And this season they had to deal with a lot of different things, just like every team does, with injuries and players being away on other commitments and whatnot. So they'll be raring to go come next season. But for Canberra, Croatia, they're into the finals and they'll be looking to add another trophy to their trophy cabinet. Who have we got next up, Matt?
Next up, we have Canberra Olympic 3-0 victory over Canberra United Academy. Olympic opened the scoring in the 18th minute as Ashley Sykes stormed into the box before squaring it to Olivia Fogarty to score the first goal. The home side doubled their lead as Gurney dribbled across her marker and unleashed an absolute bullet of a shot into the top right corner 7 minutes later. Vanessa Ryan struck a great cross into the box, and Olivia Fogarty hit it first time in midair for her brace to make it 3-0 and sealed the game for Canberra Olympic in that first half. Canberra United Academy ended the season in 6th place with 18 points. And considering it's an academy side, I'm sure this isn't the end of the actual year for them. I'm sure they'll be playing other teams from Sydney and whatnot. So I'm sure this isn't the end for them, but they will not be in finals. We'll CUA. Canberra Olympic found out on Monday that they could not win the league title on the final day of the season due to Canberra Croatia's victory over West Canberra Wanderers. Canberra Olympic finished in 2nd place with 49 points, 5 points behind Canberra Croatia. Olympic will face their rivals Canberra Croatia this weekend in the qualification semi-final at Deakin Stadium, and we all know what close games those have been, so that should be an absolute cracker. And to be confirmed, most likely will be Deakin Stadium, but it can always change since we do have a solid 5 or so days before that will happen. Michael, who is last up, a good result here for Wagga.
Yeah, very good result for Wagga. It was a 1-1 draw on their travels against Tuggeranong United in this match. Matt, it was Hall that scored for Tuggeranong and Cochrane that scored for Wagga City Wanderers. A share of the spoils between these two sides that, they've had to endure many obstacles throughout the season, Matt. So sort of a fitting way for two, you could say, struggling outfits to, end their season on a positive, to get a point in a tightly contested match. Tuggeranong will be, disappointed that they weren't able to actually hold out until the final whistle, as they conceded in the 90th minute, which prevented them from getting 3 points to end their season on a high. It was a clinical penalty from Hall in the first half in the 22nd minute, which gave Tuggeranong the advantage. And, they were obviously from that goal in very high spirits to, end their season on a high, end their season with a victory. And I think from that sort of moment onwards, you could see that both sides certainly had their opportunities throughout the game. But it was a great volley from Cochrane right at the death that gave, Wagga a point to take back to Wagga and finish off their season somewhat on a high. Like I said at the top, Matt, two sides that, obviously weren't tipped to do, amazing things in the competition in terms of, competing for a title. And they definitely had to endure a lot of different things, but there was also a lot of perseverance that both sides displayed, I thought, throughout the year, which always puts a smile on the face of those that, follow this league closely and to know what these two teams have been through, for them to sort of, come out week after week and put on, a performance like that is something that won't go unrecognized. So good on Tuggeranong United and Wagga City Wanderers for, keeping at it all season long, and now they'll get a well-deserved rest before, going at it again in the 2023 season. Matt, give us a rundown of the NPLW semi-final fixtures. There's going to be absolute fireworks across these two matches, aren't there?
Certainly should be. First up, elimination final, Belconnen United, West Canberra Wanderers, time, day, and venue to be confirmed. For this weekend, both teams played each other, so it's going to be interesting to see how that match backs up, since they played each other literally this past weekend. And last up, the qualification final between Canberra Croatia and Canberra Olympic, 1v2. The loser of this one does get another chance, and the winner goes straight to the final. So a lot to play for here, and these matches have been absolute crackers and very, very close matches. There hasn't been a lot separating these two whenever they've played each other so far in the league this season. So both matches are definitely ones to look out for on NPL TV.
CPL action is next on our agenda, Matt. The last round of CPL football will kick things off in Yoogali. It was them up against Queanbeyan City. It was Queanbeyan City who came away with a 2-1 victory in this match. Delahi and Sellers getting on the score sheet for the visitors, and Priest scoring for Yoogali in this encounter. Queanbeyan, they got off to a great start in this one, Matt, in their trip away to Griffith. 2 goals in the opening 10 minutes of this game really set them, on their way, and set a great pace for them to obviously go on and get the 3 points. But, Delahi scored, 3 minutes into the encounter, and then Sellers scored just 5 minutes later in the 8th minute. So already after 8 minutes, it was 2-0 to Queanbeyan, and you could already tell that they were in the mood at that point, which they've been able to display in patches here and there. We know that they're not short on quality in front of goal. They're always capable of sort of grabbing a few quick fire goals, and that's exactly what they did in this matchup. Yoogali, as is their sort of spirit, they weren't going to give up without a fight, Matt. We know this already about Yoogali. They fought back, to half the deficit to 2-1 after just 17 minutes. So, I mean, the faithful, watching on in this game would have been, pretty spoilt to have 3 goals, in 17 minutes. And, Priest, he found the back of the net, and that half the deficit to 2-1. And, no one was able to obviously find the back of the net for the rest of the game, which I really think indicates that both teams became a lot more sort of solid in defense, and their shape improved as the game went on. Because, at the start of the match, the game can be, teams are just sort of just figuring each other out at that point, and no one's really settled. So I think that's why we saw sort of 3 goals in the opening 17 minutes, and then we didn't see anything, after that point. And, Yoogali, due to this result, Matt, they finished the season in 7th with 18 points. Not an amazing season, but they're another team that sort of had to go through a fair bit over the course of the season. So well done to them for, their public support as well, and others on Facebook for Griffith NPL junior teams that made, finals, which, were excluded from them. Capital Football reversed the decision and the teams were able to play. So, I mean, that's just a massive round of applause there and great for, ACT regional football, Matt. Absolutely. And this victory means for Queanbeyan that, they secured second spot with 42 points, 1 point above ANU. They've earned a spot in the qualification semi-final against Tuggeranong next week. ANU finished third with 41 points, and they were just 1 point off, the second placed Queanbeyan. So it just goes to show how tight that top four race was, particularly between Queanbeyan and ANU, that sort of last, 3 to 4 games. Especially because of the form ANU were in, Matt, they finished the season really, really strong. So a very tight race in the top four there, but Queanbeyan managed to cement second spot, and it sets them up with a very, very good game against Tuggeranong United this weekend. What do we have next up?
Next up, we have the Brindabella Blues against Wagga City Wanderers. Brindabella Blues winning 1-0. A lot on the line in this one. Curtis Schaefer broke the deadlock and scored the only goal of the match in the 70th minute to give the Brindies a 1-0 victory. This was Schaefer's third goal in 3 consecutive matches and has scored 5 out of the Brindies' last 6 goals. Credit to Russ, of course, for that stat. Heading into this one, it was a must-win for either side if they were to make the finals, and they needed, and they also needed White Eagles to lose or draw if one of them won, as they were all tied on 28 points. Wagga ended the season in 6th place with 28 points, 3 points off the top 4. The Brindies, on the other hand, secured a finals berth with this victory, and the White Eagles lost to Tuggeranong United. The Brindies ended the season with 31 points in 4th place, 3 points above White Eagles and Wagga City Wanderers. Ray Junior side will face ANU in the elimination semi-final this weekend. Congratulations to the Brindies. Quite the achievement for a relatively young side in this competition. And yeah, well done to Ray Junior and his side and everyone over the Brindies there. It was a relatively different team to last season, and quite a young team as well. And we've seen the improvement over the season. They really have been battling for that top 4 this year. So well done to them on the achievement, and commiserations to Wagga and White Eagles, who were not able to make the final 4. So it was right to the wire, which as neutrals is what we want to see. Obviously for the coaches there, it's a heart in hand moment, but for the neutral, it's great to see that we had 3 teams competing for that final spot and all tied on points before the end of the last round of the season. Michael, who do we have next up?
Next up, we have Weston Molonglo up against ANU. It was the away team that came away with a 3-1 victory. It was Spears and Deans with the double on the score sheet for ANU, and Lamachin on the score sheet for Weston Molonglo. Weston, they actually started off this game quite strong, Matt, and that's what gave them that 1-0 lead in the 21st minute, courtesy of Lamachin. A very good start, and they also took that lead into the break. So I think that goes to show sort of the confidence that they were playing with, and the fact that it was the last game of the season. So they were telling themselves, come on, like, this is our last game of the season. It's against quality opposition that are going to be playing in finals football. Let's make a good account of ourselves and say that we left absolutely everything out there as the season comes to a close. It's our last, match of football for the year. But, ANU came out a better team in the second half, Matt. They made up for the no goals in the first interval with 3 unanswered goals in the second. Spears, brought his side even 7 minutes into the second stanza with his 6th goal of the season. And then Chase Deans continued his great goal scoring form as he bagged a brace in the 61st minute, and then 25 minutes later in the 86th minute. And these goals mean that Deans completes the season with 16 goals to his name. So that just goes to show you how prolific he has been throughout the entire season. On the other side of that, Weston, they finished the season in 8th place with just 4 points. As mentioned before, they finished the season a lot better than in terms of how they started the season, and their performances gradually got better as well as the season went on. So, I mean, there are definitely positives for them to build on heading into the future, Matt. And as for ANU, they knew the result of Queanbeyan versus Yoogali heading into this game. Queanbeyan's victory meant that ANU, they couldn't make second place and a spot in the qualification semi-final. So despite their, great and end of season form, Talal Safir's side, they'll need to settle for third place in this instant and an elimination semi-final against Brindabella Blues this weekend, which will be an absolute cracker. And those fixtures are something we'll get into shortly, but we do have one more game left, don't we, Matt?
We do. Next up is Tuggeranong United against Canberra White Eagles. 2-0 win for Tuggies. Unlike Tuggeranong have seemed to do in a decent amount of matches, their first goal came relatively late on through Lewis Kaminsky scoring the 86th minute, and Sam Walker capped off his final league game of the season with 20 goals this season to make it 2-0. Walker's goal has ensured that he has won the CPL Golden Boot this season for top scorer. So congratulations to him. Great achievement there. Tuggies finished the season with 50 points and, of course, in first place. And as we have talked about before, have gained promotion back to the NPL. White Eagles, on the other hand, this loss means they have missed out on the finals for this season. White Eagles have finished in 5th place with 28 points, 3 points off the top 4. Eagles assistant coach, I also want to point out, White Eagles assistant coach Paul Townsley has announced he'll be moving to Queensland, which means that this is the end of his long coaching tenure in a variety of codes in Canberra as well. And most recently, he's coached 23s NPL men's teams, women's NPL with Monaro as well, and of course 23s with White Eagles and assistant coach with White Eagles as well. I just want to say best of luck to Paul, friend of the show, of course. He's been on the pod numerous amount of times as a panelist, and I've interviewed him obviously a number of times also. So thanks for everything, Paul, and thanks for coming on whenever we asked you, even if some of them were pretty last minute. So thank you very much. And I think I saw somewhere on Facebook that midweek, the last goal of Paul's coaching in Canberra was actually scored by Ben, his son, midweek for White Eagles. I'm assuming that would have been for 23s. I'm sure Ben will correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's a nice piece of information to end that one. So, Michael, what are our fixtures, semi-final fixtures for this weekend?
Yeah, some crackers, Matt. Like we've discussed throughout the 3 different competitions, I mean, this weekend's going to be high intensity, and it doesn't stop here with CPL. We've got ANU up against Brindabella Blues, like you mentioned, in that elimination final. So the time, day, and venue to be confirmed for this weekend. So details will, I'm sure, come out very shortly, sort of following the release of this podcast. And then we've got the qualification final, which is Tuggeranong United versus Queanbeyan City. Like the first match, time, day, and venue to be confirmed for this weekend. But some absolutely cracking games on display this weekend across, CPL, NPL, and NPLW. I mean, it's a good weekend to get out and watch, some finals football here in Canberra. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people trying to make, whatever game they can. And it's going to be a great weekend. I mean, there's going to be some great football being played. And I can't wait to sort of break it all down, Matt. I can't wait to see what we're talking about the next time we're on the show.
Yeah, 100%. massive matches this weekend. Like I said, stay tuned to the Capital Football, NPL Capital Football Facebook page. If the times do change to what is on Dribble right now, they will be up there. And yeah, try and get out some of these matches. If not, NPL TV will be there. For NPL2, obviously, it won't be on NPL TV. Sorry, CPL, it won't be on NPL TV. So try and get out to those if you can. I'm sure some of the match times will be good for viewing and trying to go to the matches also. So heaps of matches there. Try and catch it. And if there's any junior CPL or NPL going on around you, those matches have also been good as well. Like I said, I was at 18's Div 2 on the weekend. That was awesome to see the atmosphere and the crowds there. So heaps of local football on for you. Enjoy what you can. Michael, any last words before we head?
Not much more other than, the football this weekend is going to be great. And I can't wait to break it all down with you next week. It'll be great to do so. There'll be a lot going on, and I hope there's some cracking goals in the midst as well, just to sort of bring it all together, along with all the, I'm sure the drama and the intensity that'll be filled with these games. I mean, there's a lot on the line for these teams, particularly when we talk about the elimination finals, we're talking about a you win or you go home scenario. So particularly those games are going to have a lot of intensity attached to it. So can't wait to break it down.
It should definitely be a cracker of a weekend, and hopefully it's good weather as well to accompany that. Everybody, thanks for listening as always. That was episode 67 of the Canberra Football Show. We'll see you next week. Hello, everybody. Welcome to an extra segment of the show. Chris Webb joins us. Webby, thanks for joining us to discuss your thoughts on how the NPL2 ladder finished and, CPL. I've actually said CPL all season. For some reason now I'm saying it's NPL2, even though I've gone the whole season with saying CPL. The CPL ladder and the State League final, State League 1 men's final also. Webby, how's it going? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, really good. Look, thanks for accommodating me. My prima donna requests getting in the way of just being part of the show normally, but no, look, it's good to be on, and thanks for taking the extra effort.
Nah, it's all good. Always a pleasure. Let's start with CPL, since I'll add this to that part of the recording. What did you think of the final four? Let's start with the Brindis pipping White Eagles and Wagga. Obviously, Brindis with a big 1-0 victory against Wagga, and then Wagga losing to Tuggeranong, which meant that the Brindis ended up winning. It was huge for the Brindis that White Eagles didn't get it because it didn't get a win because White Eagles triumphed both of them on goal difference, which would have faltered Brindis if White Eagles won.
Yeah, look, I think if you go back to our pre-season preview of the leagues, we talked about Brindy, and I said, look, it would not be a surprise to see them in the top four. But in saying that, come probably 10 weeks into the season, if you'd asked me then, I probably would say it would have been a surprise to see them make the top four. From there, they probably didn't start as well as they could have, but they're kind of back into their season. It's probably no coincidence. It also saw Curtis Schaefer find a lot of form and score a lot of goals in that back end of the season as well. But they've done really well to kind of turn it around and push, and them and Wagga kind of got really quite high into both of them were toggling in that third spot. And look, this is no offense to either of those teams in order to take anything away from what they achieved, but a lot of that I think is probably due to White Eagles just being way too inconsistent. Again, there's an old cliche that the table never lies. I kind of think the table lies quite a lot, and one of the best indicators of strengths of teams is actually goal difference. I think it's a much better indication. And you saw White Eagles' goal difference was so much higher, but for them not to finish in that top four really says a lot about what they did as a team and probably how they underperformed. But if a team's going to give you a sniff, you need to step up and take it. And Brindabella really did a massive job on that. Wagga really looked like they were the team that were going to take it for a good while. That loss to Weston, that 5-0 loss to Weston, I think was very much the turning point. And in the end, cost them. They win that game. They would have made the top four. They would have already been in the top four with a round to go. But that probably just kind of set them back just a little, and it gave Brindy a sniff to get in. And as I said, Brindy have just been they've been a pretty a good little project and for people to study to go. They kind of came in 4 seasons ago, I think, with an extremely young team, a handful of senior guys, but backed their players coming through from the 18s. They had this really, really good 18s team that Curtis Schaefer was part of. And they put a lot of faith in those guys, and they probably struggled a little bit for the first 2 seasons, but now all of a sudden you tell that they're more than competing with the big boys. What they're going to find now is probably a struggle to keep some of these players. I think some NPL1 teams will be sniffing around for a handful of those players. So it will be a test on Ray and the culture that they've built to see what they can do next year. Because really, if they keep hold of them, another year under their belt, another kind of pre-season with Ray, they really should be kicking on.
And Queanbeyan pipping ANU to second place. I guess that draw, I think, was it last week where ANU got the draws the week before? It seems like that draw that ANU got either last week or the week before ended up costing them that second place and the chance for the qualification semi-final. What do you make of that race? Obviously, ANU coming up very good near the end of the season, and Queanbeyan sort of slipping off a bit, but in regards to them getting second place, they got their last couple of results spot on to pip ANU.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Those two teams ebbed and flowed with massive inconsistencies for the quality that they have, but they were kind of opposing. So Queanbeyan started like a firecracker this season, and ANU had a pretty mediocre start to the season, and then Queanbeyan dipped off very much to the middle back end, and ANU went on that 7-game winning streak where they beat everybody in a row, including Tuggeranong. But then ANU then slipped up against White Eagles. With Dayan's fantastic free kick. They were 2-0 up and thought that they had it in the bag, and White Eagles fought back, which was really probably a bad result for both teams. It cost ANU that top 2 spot, and it cost White Eagles a top 4 spot. One of the teams just had to win that game. And then Queanbeyan, then that last little run, have been on a great little last 4-game run to, it looked for a stage they had lost it. ANU were on this huge streak. It was clearly ANU's second spot, and then one little sniff and Queanbeyan would stayed on their coattails and jumped them right when they needed to. So pretty impressive again. We talked about these two teams. ANU again, I think really it's tough because I think that they should be disappointed with how they finished. They were a point off promotion last year to a team that, by and large stayed the same in NPL and made the top 4 in NPL the next season. So ANU really should have been pushing hard for that promotion spot, but really never got themselves in the race with Tuggeranong. And they also, the disruption, wasn't too much with the playing group. Again, we talk about losing Sam Carter's. It's enormous. We'll see. We'll see what happens in the finals. ANU very much a finals team, but Queanbeyan, they had a huge turnover of players, and on paper, their team compares. It's well and truly off last year's team. But as we kind of said pre-season, much better unison with the group that they had. Goran very much kind of got the players he knew would do the work for him, and it's unsurprising that they ended up so high.
And let's quickly go over those two semi-finals. We got the elimination final, Brindis. Just some quick thoughts. Brindis against ANU, and then the qualification final between Tuggeranong and Queanbeyan. What are your thoughts on those?
Look, I think they're going to be really cracking games. Look, if I was going to be a betting man, I think Tuggeranong are probably just in. They had a bit of a slip up as well, but they've shown some pretty good form the last 2 weeks. And, I just think that we talked about it. I think that they're just that on just a little bit of a different level to the rest of the teams this season. And so I think it would be obviously Queanbeyan got a chance. They've beaten them already this season. But look, if I was going to put money on it, I'd put money on Tuggies pushing through. In the other game, like I said, while Brindy have done a great job to get there, and Brindy have had a decent record against ANU, come finals time, ANU are just absolute specialists. Just go through the last kind of 8 or 9 years. And again, one of the things that ANU have is a lot of those players have played for this team in the last 8 or 9 years. Yarn and Chase, and there's a good handful of them. Ricey, they know how to win finals, and they know how to win finals big. They've won some games 6-7-0 in finals the last few years. So I think again, while they did have that little slip up to White Eagles, and they got pushed really hard this week with Weston, they are in pretty good form, and I wouldn't be surprised if ANU can actually push all the way in this final series.
There we go. Webby choosing ANU again. I'm sure you'll get another text from a certain coach.
Yeah. Talal's put the kiss of death on his boys now, but yeah.
Before we get into the State League, I'll just quickly get your thoughts on Belconnen, the newest CPL club for next season. Just got relegated after their loss to the O'Connor Knights. So we'll talk a bit off air, and obviously you've been around the game for a while here in Canberra, and Belco, a pretty big name to be going down to CPL next season.
A massive, the biggest name that's been in this league, probably. Well, yeah, debatable. Well, they probably are the biggest. We've had the fact Juventus never dropped down to this league. When Juventus kind of dropped out of the competition in 2006, they just dropped it. They just completely dropped away. If Juventus were in there, you'd say it's comparable to Belconnen being in this competition. Tigers did drop into this competition, but Belconnen, while that's another huge club, Belconnen has just a much more storied history in football in Canberra. This is a team that won the Premier League in New South Wales in only 20 years ago, and now they're in the second division in Canberra. So it's just enormous, absolutely enormous. They were essentially the ACT rep team to now be in the next grade. It's going to be massive. It's a massive club in terms of, I hate using that. It's like talking about Manchester United, but in terms of Canberra, they kind of are in that league. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the player pool. We saw it with Tuggeranong. They went down, but they did lose a few, but I'm quietly confident Mitch kind of kept the guys he wanted to keep. And whether Michael Sikorsky can do the same, whether Michael's even going to be there again, I think that was another thing. Like they got Mitch locked in straight away, and Mitch was then so instrumental at keeping the guys in. So it's going to be interesting to see what Belconnen do, whether they're able to keep Michael, then he's able to convince the players to play. It's got to be very interesting. The one thing I think is they've got such a strong 23s team. They've won first or second in 23s probably the last 15 straight seasons. So You know, we always kind of talk about it at the top level 23s team in NPL1 would always be reasonably competitive in CPL. So, if they can even hold on to that team plus the scattering of their first grade players, then they've got a pretty strong basis coming in. And if they can hold on to a majority of their first grade players, then they'll look very, very strong. So super interesting to see what happens. But obviously the Sharks will be out now that they've gone down with those quality players that they do have in their team. So, let's just watch this space.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens there in that regard. And State League 1 men's final, Webby, what was the result? It was Weston versus ANU, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I got to go out there. It was a very entertaining game. Weston definitely had the better of the first half. Jason Farrell was probably the standout in the first half, pulling the strings in midfield. And ANU unfortunately lost their probably talisman striker, Sam Smith. A lot of people know Sam played first grade at Belconnen and Monaro. A fantastic player. I'd almost say too good for State League 1. But he hurt his knee quite bad and went off around about half time. And I think that really hurt ANU. And surprisingly, Weston probably were less dominant in the second half, still reasonably dominant. And I think we're definitely the better team. Brett Ford and Callum Rua were very, very strong. Tom Crosley, led the kind of back line for ANU and, kept them at bay. ANU actually had quite a few chances kind of on the break. They didn't have all too much possession, but they did have a few chances on the break. And Dave Brewer was fantastic for Weston, kind of at the centre back role. And so was their goalkeeper, Josh Wade, who made a couple of handy saves in the second half. But 0-0 finished, extra time. Weston had a really, really good chance. I think it was Callum Rua had a great strike, which ANU keeper made a great save. But again, it ended up 0-0 and straight into penalties. And it was a pretty exciting penalty shootout, but Weston amazingly hit all 5 of their penalties, and they probably had their goalkeeper Josh Wade, and as I said, Josh, he used to be the first grade goalkeeper at West Canberra, and he amazingly got to 4 of the 5 pens, got a hand onto them, and crucially was able to keep one of them out. Tom Crosley was the only one from ANU who snuck in a penalty without it being touched. But that single save was enough because, as I said, Weston expertly put all of them away. One to note was a Jorginho-esque Adam Johnson did a little hop and a skip and then towed it into the side netting. But Brett Ford stepped up for the last 5th penalty and dispatched it with great nonchalance, and that was it. Game over. So, look, I think the most deserving team won, which doesn't always happen in a penalty shootout. But both teams share the silverware. ANU obviously is the league champions and theoretically in line for promotion, which I guess they're not going to take with their big brothers already up in the competition. But so both teams taking away the silverware in that one.
Yeah, and that's another watch this space, isn't it, in terms of promotion, because Weston and ANU both finishing 1st and 2nd. Gungahlin Juventus finished 3rd. Am I correct there? Yep. So we'll have to wait and see because I don't think it's confirmed. Like, I'm pretty sure we can safely say if Gungahlin Juventus finished top, then it wouldn't be confirmed yet, but it would be certain that they'd be going up, right?
Yeah. If Juventus had won the league, I think it would be close to certain that Weston would be out of CPL and Juventus would be up. But now that 1st and 2nd were taken by teams who already have CPL teams, I think it's all up in the air.
Indeed. So
again, this is another watch this space.
Another watch this space. There's quite a few watch this spaces this year
exactly.
in terms of football in Canberra. Probably more than last year, even though we had COVID to end the season. Anyway, Webby, thanks for joining me. We'll hope to have you back on for just in time for finals time, I'm sure. And any last words?
No, look, thanks again for having me. And if I don't get on again this year, thanks, guys, for doing such a great job. I think this is probably your first full season, so congratulations on that. But yeah, look, good luck for everyone in the finals. The first grade men, the first grade women, the CPL guys. Should be some cracking games. Especially some of those first and second women's matches. Those teams are pretty evenly matched up there. So yeah, it'd be good. Looking forward to it.